Back through the years I go wandering once again, back to the seasons of my youth. I recall a box of rags someone gave us, how my mama put those rags to use. There were rags of many colors, every piece was small, didn't have a coat, and it was way down in the fall. Mama sewed the rags together, sewed every piece with love. She made my coat of many colors I was so proud of. As she sewed, she told a story from the Bible she had read, about a coat of many colors Joseph wore. And then she said, perhaps this coat will bring you good luck and happiness. And I just couldn't wait to wear it as Mama blessed it with a kiss. A coat of many colors my Mama made for me, made from only rags, but I wore it so proudly. No, we didn't have much money, I was rich as I could be, in my coat of many colors Mama made for me. With patches on my breeches, holes in both my shoes, a coat of many colors. Well, I started off to school just to find the children laughing, making fun of me, in my coat of many colors Mama made for me. I didn't understand it, for I felt I was rich. Told him of the love my Mama sewed in every stitch, all about the stories Mama told me while she sewed, and how my coat of many colors was worth more than all their gold. I didn't understand it, and I tried to make them see. One's only poor, only if you choose to be. No, we didn't have no money, but I'm as rich as I could be, in my coat of many colors Mama made for me. A coat of many colors Mama made just for me. Some glad morning when this life is o'er, I'll fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away, I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. When the shadows of this life has grown, I'll fly away. Like a bird from prison bars has flown, I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Just a few more weary days and then I'll they tell me of a home far beyond the skies. Tell me of a home far away. Oh, they tell me of a home where no storm clouds arise. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Oh, the land of cloudless days. Oh, the land of an unclouded sky. Oh, they tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Oh, they tell me of a home where my friends have gone. They tell me of that land far away, where the tree of life in eternal bloom shed its fragrance through an unclouded day. Oh, they tell me of the King and his beauty there. Tell me that mine eyes shall behold, where he sits on a throne that is whiter than snow, in a city that is made of gold. Oh, the land of cloudless days. Oh, the land of an unclouded sky. Oh, they tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. They tell me that he smiles on his children there. Smiles drive their sorrows away. And they tell me that no tears ever come again. Lovely land of unclouded day. Oh, the land of cloudless days. Oh, the land of an unclouded sky. They tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. I have no silver, no diamonds, no gold. I am far richer by the visions I hold, 'cause I've seen the mountains and I've seen the sea. I've seen all the beauty, lived a life that was free. When the cool autumn moonlight shines down through the trees, no place under heaven would I rather be, where the wild birds are flying and the caribou roam. Many places I've rambled, this is my home. When I'm weary, it's time to rest. Take this old body to the place I love best, somewhere on that mountain. Turn my face to the sea. Let the wind in the treetops sing me to sleep. 'Cause I've seen the mountains, I've been to the sea, and all of that beauty is like heaven to me, where the wild birds are flying this is my home. When the wild birds are flying and the caribou roam, many places I've rambled, this is my home. Sonny lives on the farm in a wide open space where you can take off your sneakers and give up the race. You can lay down your head by a sweet riverbed. Sonny always remembers what it was his mama said. Sonny carries a load, though he's barely a man. There ain't all that to do, still he does what he can. And he watches the sea from a room by the stairs, and the waves keep on rolling. He's done that for years. Sonny, don't go away, I am here all alone. And your daddy's a sailor who never comes home. And the nights get so long, silence goes on, and I'm feeling so tired, not all that strong. It's 100 miles to town, Sonny's never been there, but he goes to the highway and he stands there and stares. And the mail comes at 4, and the mailman is old, but he still dreams his dreams full of silver and gold. Sonny, don't go away, I am here all alone. And your daddy's a sailor who never comes home. And the nights get so long, silence goes on, and I'm feeling so tired, not all that strong. Sonny's dreams can't be real, they're just stories he's read. They're just stars in his eyes, they're just dreams in his head. He's hungry inside that wide world outside, and I know I can't hold him. Tried and I've tried and I've tried. Sonny, don't go away, I am here all alone. And your daddy's a sailor who never comes home. And the nights get so long, silence goes on, and I'm feeling so tired, not all that strong. Sonny, don't go away. She's a rocky island in the ocean. She's pounded by wind from the sea. You might think she's rugged and cold, but she's home, sweet home to me. She's bordered by inlets, tickles and sounds, reaches by coves and by bays. She soothes your visions as you sail round her shores, the mixture of greens, browns and grays. And the houses lie scattered among the rocks in the cove, trimmed with orange, green, yellow and blue. Twillingate, Fogo, Little Heartsease, Fortune, Trout River for Muse. She's a rocky isle in the ocean. She's pounded by wind from the sea. You might think she's rugged and cold, but she's home, sweet home to me. Been tortured for centuries, her story's untold. She struggled with fortunes unknown. Laid bare by the glaciers, they scraped her to the bone, taking sand to make Grand Bank shoals. She's been battered for eons by the cold biting wind, chewing rocks to soft beaches of sand, carving her face and giving us a place we now call Newfoundland. She's a rocky isle in the ocean. She's pounded by wind from the sea. You might think she's rugged and cold, but she's home, sweet home to me. The ocean surrounds her, it gives and it takes, like shepherd, lion, and lamb. The pounding and grinding is a constant reminding the forces that follow the calm. From the fury of a blizzard on a cold winter's night to the quiet of a warm summer day, all hardships forgotten, old debts all repaid, with a day on a quiet, peaceful bay. She's a rocky isle in the ocean. She's pounded by wind from the sea. You might think she's rugged and cold, but she's home, sweet home to me. She's a rocky isle in the ocean. She's pounded by wind from the sea. You might think she's rugged and cold, but she's home, sweet home to me.
Monday, December 6th marks the 21st anniversary of what we know as Montreal's Massacre against violence activities across Canada. We will remember the 14 women who were gunned down at the University of Engineering in Montreal. On December 6, 1989, the last day of final exams for students, gunmen entered the university. Most students had left for their day to start Christmas with families and friends. At a little past 5 p.m., the gunsman ran through the hallways quickly, entering a classroom on the first floor, classroom on the second floor, and the cafeteria, shouting he wanted the women. Within approximately 15 minutes, he had murdered 14 women and injured 13 students, 9 women and 4 men. He then killed himself. He carried a note that said he blamed women for the problems in his life, society as a whole. In 1991, Premier of Canada decided December 6th was the date that 14 women in Montreal were murdered as the National Day of Remembrance and Actions on Violence Against Women. This tragedy forced us to face the experience of violence against women in our society. It compares us to reflect on these violence actions and force us to feel fear for the violence that women and children in our own communities experience. As Newfoundlanders and Labradorians take the problem of violence seriously, because we too have faced equal crimes. In the last 21 years, more than 20 Newfoundlanders women have been killed by their parents experience in extreme conditions and entering a homicidal or a murder seriously. Up to 75% of women and girls will be blamed, badly forced into sex, or otherwise abused in their lifetime.
Upon the mountain with a candle in my hands. Upon the mountain with a candle in my hands.
When I was little, I dreamed of doing things with action. I wanted to be a fireman, you can save lives. I wanted to be a policeman. Much later, I wanted to be an astronaut after I saw them go to the moon. I was always interested in science. I wanted to explain things, to understand why and how they worked. For me, going to Polytechnique was kind of a first step. I had a dream, and I went after it. I finished my studies one night, the 6th of December. I finished on the 6th of December, 1989. My studies were finished and I was happy. The world was opening up before me. I was convinced that the world was mine. I was having supper with some friends when a guy came into the cafeteria and told us to get out because there was a madman who was shooting at everybody. The crowd came running. Everyone was panicked, terrified. I heard a shot, I heard a scream. I felt something graze my ear and burn me. At that point, I fell down. Something inside me said, "Don't faint, you have to see what's happening, but don't move, play dead." So I stayed like that, not moving. There was a woman beside me. I was on my stomach and she was on her back. And he walked between us. I never saw his face, I just saw his legs. As he walked between us, I heard a shot. He shot her again. Just like that. Point blank. I didn't want to believe it. I got up, it was happening so fast, he ran off. I heard more screams. I heard another shot.
The managing editor came out into the newsroom and I heard him really clearly in the whole newsroom, heard him just say blanketed. And within seconds, everybody was running out there. At the foot of the hill, we caught up with a man who had been in there, and he told us a little bit. At least at that point, we knew that there had been a gunman inside the building, and he had been shooting.
Shooting on the second floor, right above us.
So that's where it started.
There were all sorts of rumors going around. There was one gunman, there were two gunmen.
It was only when I got out that I touched my hair and realized I was wounded and bleeding. Everything was confused outside, total confusion, screams. It was strange. I got away from the campus in confusion as fast as I could. I was afraid people would think I was completely crazy and wouldn't believe me. So instead of going to the hospital, I went to a friend's house because I needed to talk, to tell someone what had just happened.
We stood there watching the wounded go by, stretcher after stretcher after stretcher. And then there was a long period of maybe an hour and a half sort of waiting in this wet snow that was falling out there, and it kept getting colder and colder.
I arrived at my friend's. She saw the blood on my sweater and she asked me, "What happened to you? Where have you been?" I said, "I come from Polytechnique. There was a madman shooting at everyone. He shot me." And she didn't want to believe it either, but I said to her, come and watch the TV. It's strange, eh? When you lived through an extremely intense experience, and to validate it, I had to refer to TV so people would believe me. I heard the full story on TV at the same time as everyone. Because for me, what happened in the cafeteria was only part of the story.
On the first floor, cafeteria, 3 victims, 3 ladies, had been shot to death. On the second floor, Once again, one lady was shot to death. In a classroom, 6 girls had been shot to death.
I mean, that's the moment in the whole thing that I'll remember the most, because that's when the impact of it really hit you. And the fact that it was all women hit right then, too. It wasn't delayed. It didn't sort of take a while to sort out what had happened, because just from standing outside or from knowing anything at all about the poly, you knew that the majority of people in there were men. So if most of the dead were women, there was obviously something definite going on here.
He had with him a letter of 3 pages. The way he explains it is, his problems were mainly the fault of women. The words that he used can be called anti-feminist. That's the least we can say.
I think I became... It was a double shock. I wanted to scream, I couldn't scream. I wanted to cry, I couldn't cry. My emotions were frozen. I became sad, so sad. I felt I was living in pure horror. The horror was feeling I just lost the sense of events, the ability to understand what was happening. It was too big, it was too emotional, it was too incredible, it was too unfair, it was too sick.
There must have been at least 3,000 people waiting on in really frigid cold. It was really cold out there. It just seemed to go with the feelings that everybody had at the time, being in this chill. And in this case, because it was so enormous, it had an impact on everyone in the city.
I think it's something unbelievable in our society that something like that is happening. I cannot understand it. I'm trying to understand it, but I'm especially trying to understand the violence inside the men. Why the men particularly?
But the men killed was poor, was very sick,
Yes, but the thing is that, is it the reflect of a society, of the men in a society, or is it an isolated act?
It's an isolated act. It's not the phenomenon of society. It's impossible. We'll be in the war. That was a phenomenon of society, in my opinion.
Yeah, but who makes the war?
A man is sick, that's all,
I disagree. I don't feel that it's an isolated act. I feel as if it happened to myself. And I keep feeling as if I or my daughter was in that room. I keep seeing those girls. And I feel that what this man did, he was a maniac, but it's just a magnification of what is happening to women all the time.
I've never quite gotten a handle on the impact of the whole thing. I don't think that no matter how much we say or how much we report it, all the millions of words that have been expended on this, that nothing ever quite caught the magnitude of the horror of what happened there.
I thought about the fact that this had to do with women's liberation. In other words, we were being punished, for something that is essentially a great gain in society, that is freedom. We've been pushing to free ourselves, and as a result, a little more of society with us for the last 20 years. Well, longer than that, but very actively for the last 20 years. And no one prepared us for this. A lot of people said that they weren't surprised at La Polytechnique. Well, I'm sorry. I was surprised, and I think we should be surprised. No one ever thought, I think, in their wildest nightmare, that because women, came together and decided to fight for greater emancipation, that this could sometime mean death for some of them.
As the days passed, I saw the media take the story and turn it into an isolated case. For me, it wasn't an isolated case. It was the violence I live with every day, that other women live with every day. But an exaggerated violence, violence pushed to the extreme, but with exactly the same intentions, the same form. But all of a sudden, the media was saying it's isolated. The guy was crazy. He had a bad childhood. They started looking for reasons to justify a supposedly psychotic act.
The message he left, which was a very clear message. If this was a madman, never did a madman leave such a lucid and clear message. And that we weren't ready to look at. And I found that almost as disquieting as the act itself.
It was an event that was so enormous and so unique that it brought out in women all the little daily acts of violence. Violence that goes on from the time they're little to the time they're grown up. We don't talk about it because it's too small, because that's the way life is, because maybe it opened the door on every woman's little sadnesses. I think the event touched on all the sadness and anger they have always carried around inside like a memory. It's as if it recalled a memory, not a revelation, not a new awakening. For women, it's something they've always known, but maybe in day-to-day life they don't always want to see. And it exploded.
Explosé.
Every single woman you talk to would start telling you her stories about things that had happened. You discover very quickly that almost no woman on earth has been immune to fairly heavy instances of violence and threats and so forth.
We are sometimes scared, you know. It had become at that point, you know, 20 years after the women's movement, sort of dépassé to think that or to say that. It was all supposed to be better now. We had won the battle and everyone was supposed to live happily ever after. Well, it was a rude awakening. And I think it awakened the worst fears in most women, which is why I think fear was the common denominator amongst most women, not only in Quebec, but in Canada and probably beyond the borders of Canada.
One thing about the poly is because it involved university women, many of them fairly young, it had a very high impact on people in that age group.
I don't think it's possible for a woman to say, no, I've never been, you know, harassed walking down the street. It doesn't matter what your age, your size, your race, anything. It's not, you know, it's not a personal thing. It's because you're a woman, and that's the only reason.
And it's really, really sad and scary for me because, like, I want to go out at night, you know, and, like, just to walk to the store at the corner, you know, and just to do that is, like, I have to, like, totally change, wear the cap, put the big coat on, just because of the fear, you know, of a guy coming up or just attacking me or anything, and that really bothers me because I don't feel any girl should have to go through that, you know, and it's really...
Right now, I have to say that I'm fearful of the everyday man on the street, and I'd like to think that someday women will be able to feel safe in the streets.
You're always sort of being warned, you know, don't trust, you know, certain people, and because, you know, it could be the most normal person that you know, it's so hard to figure out who should I trust and who shouldn't I.
People feel that there's far more brutality, there's far more risk of violence. People feel far more fearful than they did at one point. They feel far more helpless in the face of impending violence.
So I'm walking on the street, and all I've heard all my life is, don't go out at night, it's dangerous, something could happen to you. So I'm walking down the street, and I've heard how dangerous this is. What's going to happen to me? What am I going to be feeling? Fear. Yeah, a lot of fear, like a victim already. And sometimes that fear makes us victims even if we've never had anything happen to us. And we're all afraid. And all women, I think, in our society live with this fear
And either we do something positive about it, or we don't go out at night, or we try to ignore it, but we all have that feeling. And what we want to do is to try to find ways to live positively with that. We're not going to eradicate assault tomorrow.
I think what creates fear is not talking about it. I mean, that's true of anything that's scary. You know, you don't talk about it, and then you don't know what it is. So it takes on this mythical power.
That we always hear, don't do anything, right? They always tell us, if you're ever in a situation and someone's assaulting you, don't do anything, you'll only make it worse. What could I do? What's something that comes to your mind quickly? Kick him, yeah?
Your knee.
Use my knee. Now, that is a really good target. If I do a knee in the groin, he's going to be doubled over, he's going to be sick, he's going to be in pain for a long time, and it looks like this. Ha! With the yell. I went through the target.
Most of what we're taught to be afraid of is a stranger on the street, whereas most of what we experience is from someone we know. So sometimes the fear, or the focus of the fear, and the reality are really separated. And that doesn't help us.
Then you put it down one step, and again, so that it's really tight and there's no air inside it. And then you're going to put your thumb in front. Pretty good, eh? Just making a fist makes you feel strong sometimes, eh? Okay, so just knowing how. Like, this is where information can make us stronger. If I didn't know how to make a fist,
women are afraid partly because they have no one to turn to. Their friends, their lovers, their husbands, their parents, in some cases, are often the people that they have to be the most afraid of. They start wondering who to trust. And in women's lives, very frequently, that very small network may include one or more people that could be potentially, or in fact is, violent against a woman. We know that 1 in 4 women are sexually assaulted at some time during their life, half before the age of 17. We know that 1 million women are abused by their husbands or intimate partners in 1 year, in each year. We know that approximately 100,000 women a year are assaulted by someone other than their husband or intimate partner in each year. Women are more likely to be victims of theft. And the latest statistics I know of is in 1988, 97 women were killed by their husband, ex-husband, or intimate partner.
As a fact that violence against women in its many forms, from wife abuse to forced prostitution to genital mutilation to gang rape to female infanticide to all the various forms that this occurs throughout the world, is the most pervasive and the most insidious human rights abuse in the world today. It is becoming clear as we gather statistics, and we have nowhere near any kind of real statistical picture of this issue. But as we gather statistics, it is clear that the numbers of women who suffer various forms of violence, maiming, and death far exceeds the list of Amnesty International's political prisoners, far exceeds the list of deaths from any other single cause in the world, except at certain moments of the height of political warfare. This is the leading cause of death for women internationally.
What Matt is trying to say to Canadian women is that we can't say, look at the violence over there. We have to say, look at the violence which we all have directed against us, and the violence which is part of the lives of all of us.
I believe that if any other group in society were so systematically battered and killed in order to be controlled, we would understand that this is a civil emergency, that the war on women is a civil emergency. And I think that we are coming to a point where we must understand this, because the war on women is having many consequences that are going to create civil emergency.
There's no safe place for women. There's no safe place for any woman, not for my grandchildren, not for my granddaughters, not for my daughter, not for anybody, nowhere in this world.
When I've asked people about the sort of violence that worries them, that really scares them, in every city and town, every place, people have mentioned playground violence, and they've made a point of saying that it's very different from the playground violence that you tend to think of as being, you know, the traditional bully, the usual kind of stuff that happens. They're talking now about simulated rapes of little girls, not actual penetration or anything of that nature, but kinds of ganging up, you know, several little boys attacking one little girl, taking her clothes off, scratching her, hitting her, that kind of thing. There's much more thought about much more worry about people playing out scenes they've seen on TV, so that even the language that's used is far more insulting and brutal and colorful, if you want to put it that way, than a child might think of just on their own.
All of a sudden, he turned around and pointed what we thought then was a gun, and took this stance as if he was going to shoot. And looked with no expression in his face, looked at us, and, you know, like that. And we froze. We just stopped. We didn't say anything. And for that split second, we thought we were going to die. We thought we were going to be shot. And he squirted water and turned around and kept on going. And he was so drunk that he didn't even laugh. Like I guess he had done this all night, you know. And I was so furious because I felt so victimized that way, you know? And it was because of the massacre that they did that prank. That's what made it funny to them. And I couldn't get it out of my mind. I was angry and I was upset, and I ended up writing letters to the newspapers, and they were published. So I felt like I did something, but we can't stay quiet, you know? We have to speak out when something happens to us.
We get surprised because we're so smug, thinking our society isn't that violent. And it's like a big slap in the face when we find out that it is.
We were all taught as tiny children, the princess being stuck up in the castle with a ferocious dragon after her, and the wonderful knight comes to save her. Those are the stories we were brought up with. Those are the roles that have been set out for us. The poor, vulnerable woman, and the man that comes along to save us. So that means, you know, there I am as a woman caught in the middle between fear of them and then having to go to them for my protection. I don't think these men realize the damage that they do when they attack or insult or proposition a woman. They don't realize the deep, irreparable damage that they commit and that they do.
There's not one woman that doesn't have an experience similar. There's you know, I mean, every woman has some sort of experience with this, and you know, I mean, we learn. I mean, some more than others, but we learn.
You know, we're not going to go back to the time when women stayed home and were submissive to men. And I think young women, that was a wonderful thing. The young women especially made that very clear after La Polytechnique. This year, the registration for women is way up in La Polytechnique. Women said, we're not heeding Marc Lépin's message. It's, you know, there is no turning the clock back, that's for sure.
Marc Lépin? I don't know who Marc Lépin is. For me, he's a killing machine. For me, he was an extreme example of a phenomenon that I have lived with and I am living with every day. For me, Marc Lépin is a problem, not an individual. I never knew him. I heard them talk about him in the media. I never even saw him. The only thing he means to me is death. That was almost the end for me. It was the end for one woman, it was death. Every time I go out, I have to face it. That's reality for me as a woman. Not as extreme, not as violent and dramatic. But for me, Marc Lépin is everywhere in the street. Marc Lépin is a symbol of death and hate.
He was part and parcel of the same thing, of the man who batters his wife, the teenager who shoves his girlfriend around, the man who thinks it's perfectly okay to squeeze a barmaid's bottom when she walks by him in a bar. Every form of violence there is, from the minor things up to rape and murder. It's part of a pattern, and we can't do anything about it until we accept that it's part of a pattern.
But as long as it's just women saying, no more violence, or saying we want change here, there won't be any change. Men have to start saying the same thing women, or wanting the same thing women want. And one of the great things about Le Polytechnique is that in the wake of that horrible incident, men did start saying the same things. For the first time in 20 years, men were saying what only women had said up to that date, which was, we are scared too, we don't want this violence. We don't want it because we're scared for our daughters, for our wives, for our lovers. And I think that's very important, that our messages start becoming the same.
Now it's all right. It's getting better. But I keep this experience as, well, I was a feminist before. In fact, what happened didn't teach me anything new as far as feminism was concerned. It just confirmed what I already knew. I learned in my nerves, in my body, what I already knew in my head. I experienced the violence, the madness. That's really something. You can't go back to being the way you were before an experience like that. It marks you really deeply. I'm in the process of change, still integrating all that, trying to understand the world better, the meaning of life too, the meaning of my fate. That's it. That's what happened to me at the Polytechnique.
The Violence Prevention Initiative has launched the Provincial Purple Ribbon Campaign to heighten awareness about violence against women and to increase provincial efforts to end this violence. The Purple Ribbon Campaign will run from November 25th to December 6th, which is the 16 days of activism against gender violence. Violence against women harms individuals and communities, devastates relationships, and costs billions of dollars worldwide in lost productivity. It violates human rights and has far-reaching consequences that fractures lives. It takes many forms and occurs in many places: domestic violence in the home, sexual abuse and abuse in schools, sexual harassment at work, rape by husbands, acquaintances, or strangers, in refugee camps, and as a tactic of war. In Newfoundland and Labrador, about 1 in 2 women over the age of 15 will be a victim of physical or sexual violence. In many cases, domestic violence is directly witnessed by children in the home. More than 30 women in this province have been killed over the last 20 years by their spouses or ex-partners. Responsibility for ending this violence lies with each of us through speaking out, raising awareness, and changing attitudes. This information was brought to you by Chantal Cribb, coordinator of the Community Action Against Violence program at the Community Youth Network.
The Harbour Breton Community Youth Network will be holding its annual general meeting on Monday, December 13th at 6:30. Elections will take place for adult board members. Newly elected youth board members will also be announced. There will be light refreshments and snacks will be provided. There will also be prize draws. If you are interested in becoming a member of the CYN board, please contact Marie Bungie, coordinator, at 885-3040, or you can email her at hbcyn@nf.aibn.com. And this event is also open to the public. We hope to see you there.